She found him in a slick of black ice and darker, viscous blood, clutching 2 infant car seats like they were the only things tethering him to life. He was dying, and the silver barrel of a handgun was aimed straight at her chest. The brutal freezing rain had been tearing through Chicago's industrial district for 4 soul-draining hours. The kind of brutal November rain that turned asphalt into treacherous glass and chilled straight through Aisha Jackson's inexpensive, polyester delivery jacket. Aisha watched her van's worn windshield wipers fight a losing battle against the deluge, her weary breath fogging the inside of the glass. The dashboard clock glowed 11:34 p.m. She'd been on her feet since 3 that afternoon. Nursing school clinicals until 7, then straight into the quick dash grind. She'd initially enrolled in medical school but had to shift to nursing when the funds dried up. Eventually, a profound, lingering grief, the loss of her family, made her drop out of both programs entirely. Her feet throbbed in her second-hand sneakers. Her stomach had been empty since the piece of corn muffin she'd split that morning, saving the other half for breakfast tomorrow. The delivery app pinged. "You have arrived." Delivered to loading dock rear entrance. $15 tip. Aisha's chest tightened with a surge of relief. That tip meant she could buy the instant ramen with a real egg in it, not just the cheap, plain kind. It meant her account wouldn't overdraft when her student loan payment tried to process on Friday. She grabbed the insulated thermal bag from the passenger seat. Expensive sushi order. The kind of late-night craving only someone with endless money would indulge. The receipt showed a $200 tab for raw fish that would likely just sit in a corporate breakroom fridge until it spoiled. Aisha cut the engine. The resulting silence was immediate and profoundly wrong. There was no hum of machinery, no security lights sweeping the lot, just the pounding percussion of rain on metal and the low, distant groan of the expressway. She'd made deliveries to warehouses before. They usually had uniformed guards, multiple cameras, that relentless industrial buzz of a place that never truly slept. This one felt deserted, hollowed out. Just drop it and go, she told herself. Clock out, drive home, eat something, sleep. But that $15 tip. Aisha pulled her hood tight and stepped out into the rain. It hit her deep brown skin like needles, sharp and vindictive. The loading dock loomed ahead, a massive concrete slab set into the building side. The overhead light was shattered and dark. The security booth, where a guard should be sitting, stood empty, its window dark. Her sneakers splashed through black puddles as she approached. The thermal bag felt heavier with each step. Something deep in her gut twisted. Her nursing rotations had trained her to trust that instinct. The same instinct that made her check breathing patterns, that noticed when a patient's color went wrong before the monitors even caught up. She was 20 feet from the dock entrance when she heard it. Crying. Not just any crying, the desperate, hiccuping wail of an infant. 2 distinct voices, actually. 2 babies. Aisha froze, the thermal bag slipping from her numb fingers. It hit the pavement with a wet, forgotten slap. "Hello." Her voice came out smaller than she intended, swallowed by the rain and darkness. "Is someone there?" The crying intensified, terrified, abandoned. Aisha's feet moved before her brain could stop them. She rounded the corner of the loading dock, her eyes struggling against the oppressive darkness. The main building's security light barely reached here, casting everything in sickly orange shadows. Then she saw them. 2 infant car seats sat on the rain-slicked concrete, partially sheltered by a fire escape overhead. The babies inside couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 months old. Their small faces were red and scrunched with distress, their cries ragged and desperate. But it was the man beside them that made Aisha's breath stop. He was slumped against the brick wall, one hand white-knuckled around the handle of the nearest car seat. Even in the dim light, she could see the dark stain spreading rapidly across his shoulder and chest, mixing with the rain, yet far too thick to be water. His suit was impossibly expensive, even ruined and blood-soaked. She could tell it cost more than her entire semester's tuition. Dark, straight hair was plastered to his forehead, and intricate ink, complex tattoos, crept up his neck from beneath his collar, serpentine and deliberate. A luxury sedan sat 20 feet away. Its front end crumpled into a support pillar, smoke still rising from the hood. "Oh my God!" Aisha dropped to her knees beside him. The cold water soaked through her jeans instantly, but she barely registered it. Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, dark, almost black in the shadows, filled with pain and something else that made her heart hammer against her ribs. Fear, not for himself, but for the crying babies beside him. Leave. His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with an accent she couldn't place. Korean maybe. His hand moved slowly, shaking, and Aisha's blood turned to ice. He was holding a gun, the barrel lifted, wavering, pointing at her chest. Leave, he rasped again. Or die. Aisha's hands were already pressing against his shoulder before her mind caught up with her body. Warm, wet, arterial blood. She'd seen enough in her clinical rotations to know this was bad. The wound was still bleeding, though not as heavily as it must have been initially, but his skin was cold. Too cold. His breathing shallow and ragged. You need a hospital. The words came out automatic, trained. I need to call 911. No, the gun steadied just slightly. His jaw clenched. No police. No hospital. They'll find the children. The babies were screaming now, a sound that tore at something primal in Aisha's chest. She looked at the loading dock doors behind him. They were locked from the outside. He wasn't hiding here. He was trapped here. Her mind raced. 2 years of medical school before she dropped out. Before her parents died in that twisted wreck of metal and fire. Before she'd held her father's hand, a black man fading quickly, while he bled out waiting for ambulances that came too late. Before she'd watched her mother slip away in a sterile hospital bed, calling Aisha's name with her last breath. If I'd just known more. If I'd just been faster. Please. The word left his lips like a prayer. The gun lowered, his strength failing. Please. Aisha looked at the babies. Looked at this Korean man who was dying but still held on to them with everything he had left. Looked at the locked doors and the empty guard booth and the smoking car. Every rational thought screamed at her to run, to call for help, to do the legal thing, the safe thing. But she thought of her father's last words. Don't let them go, baby girl. Whatever you do, don't let them go. Okay. The word left her mouth before she could stop it. Okay, but we're moving now. Can you stand? He nodded. It was probably a lie. Aisha looked at the babies. Are they yours? Something flickered in his eyes. Pride even through the agony. My children, Haewon, Junho. Then Haewon and Junho are coming too. Aisha grabbed the first car seat. Heavier than she expected. She set it carefully where the rain couldn't reach, then grabbed the second. Her arms burned. She returned to the man, sliding her shoulder under his good arm. On 3. My van is 40 feet away. You're going to make it. Understand. He nodded again. 1, 2, 3. They rose together, his substantial weight nearly buckling her knees. He was tall, easily 6'2", solid muscle beneath the ruined suit. He bit back a sound of pain and Aisha felt him trembling. Step by agonizing step, they made their way toward her van. Aisha's lungs burned. Her legs shook. She kept talking, partly to keep him conscious, partly to keep herself from screaming. I'm Aisha, by the way. Aisha Jackson. I'm a nursing student. Well, I was. I dropped out, but I remember enough. God, I hope I remember enough. They reached the van. She propped him against the side and ran back for the babies, grabbing both car seats, her arms screaming in protest. She secured them in the back seat, her fingers fumbling with the belts. The babies had quieted to exhausted whimpers, their wide eyes watching her with that unnerving awareness infants sometimes have. It's okay, Aisha whispered, though she had no idea if that was true. I've got you. The man had slid down the side of the van by the time she returned. Aisha hauled him into the passenger seat. His head fell back against the headrest. She slammed the door and raced to the driver's side. The engine coughed twice before turning over. Aisha's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel. She pulled away from the warehouse, her eyes darting between the road and the man beside her. In the glow of the dashboard, she could see his face clearly now. Sharp, aristocratic features, the intricate ink crawling up his neck, disappearing into his hairline, the suit worth 6 months of her rent, the watch on his wrist worth enough to pay off her student loans. What have I done? The drive to her studio apartment usually took 30 minutes. Aisha made it in 18, running 2 red lights, pushing her van until the frame rattled. She kept talking the whole way, rambling, desperate. My place is small, really small, but it's clean. I have medical supplies, bandages, and stuff. I can do this. I can. Thank you. His voice cut through her panic. Quiet but steady. Aisha's hands tightened on the wheel. In the back seat, one of the twins started crying again. A sound that reached into Aisha's chest and squeezed. Almost there. She promised them all, her voice breaking. Almost there. She pulled up to her building, killed the engine, and sat for one long moment in the silence. She just brought a wounded stranger and 2 babies to her home. She hadn't called the police. She had no idea what had happened to him, who he was running from, or why he was so desperate to avoid hospitals. His hand touched her arm. Aisha jumped. His eyes were open, clearer now, despite the pain etched into every line of his face. Thank you, he said again. And the weight of those 2 words, Kwon Dae-hyun's words, settled over her like a crown she never asked to wear. Aisha nodded and stepped out into the rain. And so it began. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive into the heart of this dangerous love story and high-stakes betrayal, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these secrets together. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and get ready. Let's begin. Getting him up 3 flights of stairs nearly killed them both. Aisha half carried, half dragged him, pausing every few steps while he fought to stay conscious. Mrs. Adams from 2B opened her door at the commotion, took one look at the black woman struggling with the bloodied, elegant Korean man, and closed it again without a word. Aisha had never been more grateful for her neighbor's indifference. By the time they reached her door, she was shaking. The man was barely breathing, and somewhere behind them in the night, someone was hunting. Aisha's studio apartment was a claustrophobic box on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. Peeling wallpaper the color of old coffee stains. A kitchenette barely large enough for one person to turn around in. A futon that doubled as her couch and bed. The springs shot years ago. The radiator clanked and hissed, producing more noise than heat. She kicked the door shut behind her and let Kwon Dae-hyun collapse against the nearest wall. His weight had nearly broken her on the last flight of stairs. Her shoulders screamed, her thighs burned, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. The babies were still crying. A relentless sound that made her ears ring and her chest tight. Aisha set the car seats on the futon, her hands shaking so badly she fumbled the straps. Haewon's face was red and blotchy, her tiny fists waving in distress. Junho's cries were rougher, exhausted. I know. I'm sorry. Aisha's voice cracked. She had no idea what she was doing with infants. Her clinical rotations had focused on adult care, not pediatrics. She'd held a baby exactly twice in her life, both times under supervision. A wet, rattling cough jerked her attention back to Kwon Dae-hyun. He'd slid down the wall, leaving a dark smear behind him. His head lolled to one side, eyes closed, breathing ragged. The blood had soaked through his entire left side now, spreading across expensive fabric that seemed absurd in her shabby apartment. The contrast was jarring. He looked like he'd been pulled from a completely different world and dropped into hers, broken and bleeding. Aisha's training kicked in, overriding the panic. She grabbed the plastic storage bin from under her futon, the one labeled medical, and faded Sharpie. Bandages, gauze, alcohol, tweezers, surgical thread she'd liberated from the university supply closet before dropping out. A half-empty bottle of cheap vodka that lived in her freezer for nights when the loneliness got too heavy. She spread a sheet on the floor, rolled him onto it, and knelt beside him. Her dark hands moved with mechanical precision, cutting away the ruined suit jacket. The fabric tore easily under her scissors, revealing the dress shirt beneath. White silk turned burgundy with blood. She cut that away too. The wound was high on his left shoulder, just below the collarbone. Entry wound, clean, small caliber, probably 9 millimeters. Her fingers probed carefully, feeling for the exit wound. Nothing. Damn it. The bullet was still inside. Kwon Dae-hyun's eyes fluttered open at her touch. Dark and unfocused, pupils blown wide with pain and shock. He said something in Korean, the words thick and slurred. I don't understand. Aisha pressed gauze against the wound, applying pressure. Blood welled between her fingers, hot and sticky. Stay with me. I need you awake. His hand shot up, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His fingers were cold despite the fever heat radiating from his skin. The touch sent electricity up her arm, sharp and undeniable. His gaze locked onto hers, suddenly clear and piercing. "Don't stop." His accent made the words sound like gravel and silk. "Whatever happens, don't stop." "I won't." Aisha didn't know why she made that promise, but the words came out firm. Certain. She poured vodka over the tweezers, then over the wound. Kwon Dae-hyun hissed through his teeth, his jaw clenching hard enough to make the muscles in his neck stand out like cables. The intricate tattoos there seemed to writhe in the dim light. Dragons and geometric patterns. Characters she couldn't read. Aisha took a breath and pushed the tweezers into the wound. His hand tightened on her wrist hard enough to bruise. He didn't scream, didn't make a sound beyond a sharp intake of breath. But his entire body went rigid. Every muscle locked in agony. Almost there. Sweat dripped down Aisha's spine despite the cold apartment. Her hand was steady. 2 years of med school and a lifetime of watching her mother remain calm during her father's rages had taught her how to compartmentalize. How to shut down emotion and just do what needed to be done. The tweezers caught something solid. Aisha adjusted her angle, felt resistance, pulled. The bullet came free with a wet suck that made her stomach turn. She dropped it into a bowl with a metallic clink, immediately pressing fresh gauze against the gushing blood. Kwon Dae-hyun's grip on her wrist loosened. His head fell back, breath coming in shallow gasps. For a terrifying moment, Aisha thought she'd lost him. Then his chest rose and fell, and she heard the rasp of air in his lungs. "Stay with me." She threaded the needle with shaking hands. The surgical sutures were old, probably expired, but they'd have to do. "This is going to hurt." She pushed the needle through skin. He flinched but didn't pull away. Aisha worked quickly, her stitches neat despite the tremor in her fingers. Muscle memory from countless hours in the skills lab. Sewing up practice dummies that didn't bleed or breathe or grip her wrist like she was the only thing keeping them tethered to the world. 10 stitches. 12. 15. She tied off the last one and sat back on her heels, breathing hard. Blood covered her hands, soaked into her jeans, splattered across her threadbare tank top. The metallic smell filled the small space, mixing with the vodka and the underlying scent of him. Expensive cologne cut with sweat and gunpowder. Aisha bandaged the wound with the last of her clean gauze, wrapping it tight across his shoulder and around his back. Her hands brushed against bare skin. He was burning up, his fever climbing. She needed to get fluids in him, monitor for infection, watch for signs of shock. But first the babies. They'd gone quiet. Not peaceful but exhausted. That scared Aisha more than the crying. She washed her hands in the kitchenette sink, scrubbing away the blood, then turned to the car seats. Haewon stared up at her with wide, dark eyes. She'd stopped crying, but her little face was still red, her expression one of confused distress. Junho had fallen into an uneasy sleep, his small chest rising and falling rapidly. Aisha had no formula, no bottles, no diapers. "What do I do with you?" she whispered. A sound made her turn. Kwon Dae-hyun had pushed himself up to a sitting position, his back against the wall. His face was gray with pain, but his eyes were alert, fixed on the babies with an intensity that made Aisha's breath catch. "Haewon," his voice was rough. "The girl. Junho is the boy. They need formula, diapers." "I don't have anything." Aisha heard the edge of panic creeping into her voice. "I can't just leave you here and..." "Cabinet under the car seats." He gestured weakly toward the infant carriers. "Emergency supplies." Aisha blinked. Sure enough, when she looked closer, she saw the storage compartments beneath each seat. She popped them open and found sealed bottles of ready-made formula, a pack of newborn diapers, and even a pacifier. "You came prepared." "I'm always prepared." Something flickered in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. It softened the harsh lines of his face, made him look younger, human. Aisha warmed the bottles in the microwave, testing the temperature on her wrist the way she vaguely remembered from a babysitting job when she was 16. She lifted Haewon first, cradling the tiny weight against her chest. The baby latched onto the bottle immediately, sucking with desperate hunger. "When did they last eat?" Aisha asked. 7 hours. Kwon Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. "Maybe 8 hours." These babies were probably 6 months old at most. Aisha's chest constricted with something that felt dangerously close to protective rage. What kind of situation would make a man run with his children for 8 hours without being able to stop to feed them? Haewon finished the bottle and immediately fell asleep against Aisha's shoulder. A warm, trusting weight. Aisha laid her back in the car seat and picked up Junho. He woke with a startled cry, his small body stiffening. Aisha shushed him softly, offering the bottle. He resisted at first, turning his face away, but hunger won out. He drank more slowly than his sister, his eyes watching Aisha with an unnerving awareness. "They're beautiful," Aisha said quietly. "Yes." Kwon Dae-hyun's gaze hadn't left them. In the harsh light from the single overhead bulb, Aisha could see him clearly for the first time. Strong features, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. The tattoos on his neck were intricate, clearly expensive work. And his hands, even bloodied and trembling, were elegant. Long fingers, clean nails despite everything. The kind of hands that could sign death warrants or cradle a newborn with equal capability. Aisha changed both babies, fumbling through the process with shaking hands. Neither of them seemed particularly bothered by her inexperience. They were too exhausted. She settled them back into their car seats, covered them with her only clean blanket, and turned back to Kwon Dae-hyun. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You should sleep," Aisha said. "Your body needs to heal. You should run." He said it matter-of-factly, no emotion in his voice. "Take whatever cash is in my wallet and disappear. This apartment is compromised the moment I give you a name." Aisha crossed her arms over her chest, suddenly aware of how small her space was, how close he was, how the air between them felt charged with something dangerous. Little late for that warning. "I'm giving it anyway." He shifted, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "You don't know what you've brought into your home." "Then tell me." Aisha moved closer, knelt so they were eye level. "Who shot you? Why were you at that warehouse? And why the hell would someone lock the doors from the outside?" Kwon Dae-hyun studied her for a long moment. His gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What's your phone number?" Aisha rattled it off without thinking. He pulled out his phone, cracked screen but still functioning, and pulled up her quick dash profile. Her photo stared back at her. Aisha Jackson. 5-star rating. 3,000 deliveries completed. "Who ordered the sushi?" Kwon Dae-hyun asked. Aisha frowned. "Some corporate account. Big tip." "I didn't really look at the name." He showed her the screen, the order details, the timestamp. And then he showed her something else. A cancelled order, placed and deleted within the same minute. A ghost entry that shouldn't exist. "No one ordered the sushi." "Aisha." His accent wrapped around her name like smoke. "They hacked your app. Created a fake order to lure a driver to that exact location at that exact time. They needed someone to unlock the loading dock doors from the outside. You weren't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You were the key they planned to use to get to me." Aisha's blood went cold. "That's not possible. You're a nursing student, correct? You work 4 nights a week for QuickDash. Your route covers the industrial district because no one else wants it. You're predictable, reliable." He locked the phone screen. "And you were perfect for what they needed." "What they needed?" Aisha's voice came out flat. "Which was to trap me." Kwon Dae-hyun leaned his head back against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up to him. "And to make sure there was a civilian witness who could be blamed when they killed me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and choking. Aisha stood abruptly, backing away, her mind racing, trying to process everything he was saying. "Then why didn't they kill me?" "Because I killed them first." He said it casually, like commenting on the weather. "For men waiting in the shadows of that loading dock. They expected me to arrive alone, wounded from the car crash, seeking shelter. They didn't expect me to arrive 10 minutes early and clear the building before you got there. You were protecting me." The realization hit Aisha like a physical blow. "You didn't know me. You'd never seen me before. I owed you a debt." Kwon Dae-hyun's eyes closed. "You were bait. Innocent. That made it my responsibility to ensure you survived." Aisha thought about the empty guard booth, the unlocked loading dock doors, The way he'd been positioned against the wall, gun raised. He hadn't been hiding. He'd been standing guard. "Who are you?" she whispered. He opened his eyes, met her gaze with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. "Someone who shouldn't be here. Someone who's going to get you killed if you let me stay." "Then why did you let me bring you here?" "Because I'm a selfish bastard." A hint of dark humor touched his mouth. "And because my children needed somewhere safe to sleep." Aisha looked at the twins, peaceful in their car seats, looked at this dangerous, wounded man bleeding on her floor, looked at her hands still stained with his blood despite washing them twice. She'd made her choice the moment she pressed her hands to his chest and refused to let him die. "There's a blanket in the closet," Aisha said quietly. "And the futon folds out. You're not sleeping on the floor, Aisha." "Don't." She cut him off. "You're in no condition to argue, and I'm too tired to care about the consequences right now. Tomorrow we'll figure this out. Tonight, everyone in this apartment gets to survive. That's the only goal." Kwon Dae-hyun studied her for a long moment. Then impossibly he smiled. A real smile, small and crooked and devastating. "You're dangerous," says the man who shoots people in warehouses. "Especially for a man who shoots people in warehouses." Aisha pulled the blanket from her tiny closet and spread it over the extended futon. She helped him to his feet, his weight against her side, his breath warm on her temple. She settled him on the futon, propped pillows behind his back so he could keep his wounded shoulder elevated. The studio apartment felt even smaller with 4 people in it. Aisha grabbed her own pillow and curled up on the floor between the futon and the babies. A human barrier between the wounded mob boss and his children. She should be terrified. Should be calling the cops. Should be barricading herself in the bathroom. Should be anywhere but here. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened to the sound of breathing. For lives all entangled now. All dependent on choices she'd made in the span of a few heartbeats. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Tonight she'd bought them all a chance to survive. In the darkness, she heard Kwon Dae-hyun's voice. So quiet she almost missed it. "Thank you." Aisha didn't answer. Didn't trust herself to speak because she was starting to realize something terrifying. She didn't regret any of it. Morning came harsh and unforgiving. Aisha woke to the sound of crying. Hae-won this time, her wails high-pitched and insistent. Gray light filtered through the single window, turning the studio apartment into a scene of washed-out chaos. Blood-stained sheets, medical supplies scattered across the floor, empty formula bottles, and Kwon Dae-hyun, awake and watching her from the futon. His fever had broken sometime in the night. Aisha could tell from the clarity in his eyes, the steadier rhythm of his breathing, but he looked worse in daylight. The shadows under his eyes were deep purple bruises. His skin had taken on a grayish cast. The bandages on his shoulder were spotted with fresh blood. "She's hungry," he said simply. Aisha pushed herself upright, her body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached from yesterday's exertion. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours, jerking awake at every sound, certain she'd hear footsteps in the hallway or the splintering of her door, but the building remained quiet. Even Mrs. Rivera next door kept her television at a respectful volume. Aisha prepared bottles, changed diapers, went through the motions with mechanical efficiency. Her hands knew what to do, even when her brain felt stuffed with cotton. When both babies were settled again, she turned to find Kwon Dae-hyun trying to sit up. "Don't." She crossed to him quickly. "You'll tear the stitches. I need to check my phone." His voice was strained with pain but determined. "See if anyone's reached out. You need to rest." Aisha pushed him back down, perhaps more firmly than necessary, her dark palm pressed against his bare chest, still too warm, his heart hammering beneath her hand. She pulled back quickly, awareness crackling through her like static electricity. "I'm not used to being told what to do." "Then this will be a learning experience." Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them in that moment. Something that made Aisha's breath catch and her skin feel too tight. She'd spent her entire life making herself small, invisible, unthreatening. Her father had demanded it. The nursing program had expected it. Even her quick dash deliveries required a certain practiced harmlessness. But this Korean man was looking at her like she was the most dangerous thing in the room. "You're used to people being afraid of you," Aisha said quietly. "Yes." I should be afraid of you. Yes. His gaze dropped to her mouth. But you're not. I'm terrified. Aisha's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Just not of you. The confession hung between them. Kwon Dae-hyun's expression shifted into something Aisha couldn't read. Before either of them could speak again, Junho started fussing. The moment shattered. Aisha spent the morning in survival mode. She rationed the last of the emergency formula, washed the bloodied sheets in her bathtub sink, changed Kwon Dae-hyun's bandages with steady hands that belied the chaos in her chest. By noon, the reality of the situation began to press in. She had no food beyond half a box of stale crackers. The formula wouldn't last another day. Her bank account had $43 in it, and she had a wounded crime lord and 2 infants living in her 300 square feet studio. Aisha was cleaning bottles when the question finally burst out of her. What kind of father takes 6-month-old twins to a warehouse meeting? The words came out sharper than she intended. Kwon Dae-hyun had been dozing, his breathing finally even and deep. His eyes opened at her voice, instantly alert. Excuse me. Aisha turned to face him, soapy water dripping from her hands. You heard me. What kind of man brings his babies to a place where he expects to be shot at? The kind who has no choice. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Kwon Dae-hyun shifted on the futon, his jaw tight with pain or anger or both. You think I wanted them there? You think I planned to have my children in the line of fire? Then explain it to me. Aisha crossed her arms. Make it make sense, because from where I'm standing, you either endangered your own children or you're lying about what happened. The silence stretched between them, sharp and dangerous. When Kwon Dae-hyun finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled, deadly calm. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to check the nursery monitors. They were blank static. I went to their room and found my head of security disabling the alarms. He paused, his hands clenching into fists. He was the man I trusted to protect them when I couldn't. He was supposed to be loyal. Instead, he sold out to the highest bidder. Aisha's anger deflated, replaced by cold dread. What did you do? What I had to do. Kwon Dae-hyun's gaze was steady, unflinching. I killed him silently, quickly. Then I grabbed the twins and ran. I had 15 minutes before the rest of his team realized something was wrong. I got to my car, strapped them in, and drove for the private airfield. What happened? They rammed me 6 blocks from my house, passenger side, pushed me into a pillar. His voice remained emotionless, but Aisha could see the tension in every line of his body. The airbags deployed, the twins were screaming. I had a concussion and blood in my eyes, and I knew more would be coming. So you went to the warehouse. It was the closest cover. I thought I'd have 10 minutes to regroup. Find another vehicle. Get us out of the city. He looked at the sleeping babies. The warehouse was supposed to be empty. Instead, it was a trap. They hacked your delivery app to ensure someone would unlock the doors from the outside at the exact moment they needed access. Aisha sank into the folding chair near the kitchenette, her legs suddenly weak. You didn't take them to a meeting. You were trying to escape. I am the only safe place left in their world. The words came out rough, scraped raw. Their mother is dead. My organization is compromised. Everyone I trusted has either betrayed me or been killed. I'm all they have left. Aisha thought about her own mother, calling for her with her last breaths. About holding her father's hand while he died in twisted metal. About being utterly alone in the world with no one to trust, no one to rely on. I understand, she said softly. Kwon Dae-hyun's eyes snapped to hers. Do you? Yes. Aisha held his gaze. Because I'm all I have left, too. Something shifted in his expression. The defensive wall cracked just slightly. Aisha saw past the cold mob boss exterior to the man beneath. Desperate, exhausted, terrified of failing the 2 tiny lives depending on him. Your bandages need changing, Aisha said, breaking the moment before it could become too heavy. And I need to check for infection. She gathered her supplies and knelt beside the futon. Kwon Dae-hyun sat up slowly, allowing her to unwrap the bloodied gauze. The wound looked better, angry and red, but the stitches were holding. No signs of serious infection yet. Aisha's fingers worked efficiently, cleaning the area with gentle precision. She was acutely aware of their proximity, of the heat radiating from his skin, of the way his breathing changed when her hands brushed against his bare shoulder. The tattoos were impossible to ignore now. Intricate patterns covered his neck, disappeared beneath the bandages and snaked down his arms. Dragons coiled around geometric shapes, characters in a script Aisha couldn't read. "They're coordinates," Kwon Dae-hyun said quietly. Aisha's hand stilled. "What?" "The tattoos." He lifted his right arm, showing her the inside of his forearm. Numbers hidden within the pattern. "They're not just art. They're coordinates and ciphers, access codes, encryption keys." "I don't understand." "The Jaesung syndicate has existed for 80 years. We've built assets, offshore accounts, property holdings, information networks." His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "All of it requires keys to access, passwords, biometric data. And in my case, a very literal map." Aisha traced one of the patterns with her fingertip, not quite touching his skin. "How much?" "How much what?" "How much is written on your body?" Kwon Dae-hyun's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Enough to destabilize 3 governments and fund a small army for a decade. That's why they didn't shoot you in the head." The realization clicked into place. "They need you alive or they need my skin." He said it flatly without emotion. "Dead or alive, the information is still there. They just prefer alive, because then they can extract everything I know beyond what's inked." Aisha's stomach turned. "That's barbaric. That's business." She resumed working on his bandages. Her hands less steady now. The intimacy of the task felt different with this new knowledge. She wasn't just treating a wounded man. She was handling millions, billions in encrypted assets, hidden in plain sight. "Why did you tell me?" Aisha secured the fresh bandages, her fingers lingering against his skin for just a moment too long. "Because you deserve to know what you're protecting." Kwon Dae-hyun captured her hand before she could pull away. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch that sent heat racing up her arm. "And because if something happens to me, someone needs to know how to access what the children will need. Nothing's going to happen to you. You can't promise that. Watch me." Aisha met his eyes, saw her own reflection in those dark depths. "I didn't go through medical school, lose my parents, work myself to exhaustion, and haul your dying ass up 3 flights of stairs just to lose you to an infection or a hit squad. Now why?" The question was soft, genuinely curious. "Why are you doing this? You could have called the police. Could have walked away. Could have saved yourself." Aisha thought about it, about the real answer beneath all the rationalizations. "Because for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Like I'm not just surviving shift to shift, drowning in debt and grief and emptiness. You and these babies, you need me, and I haven't been needed in a very long time." Kwon Dae-hyun's hand tightened on hers. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Maybe." Aisha smiled, surprising herself. "But at least I'll die doing something besides delivering overpriced sushi to people who don't tip." A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but close. It transformed his face, made him look younger. Human. Dangerous in an entirely different way. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of high-stakes romance. Jun-ho chose that moment to wake with a cry. Aisha pulled her hand free and went to him, lifting the baby against her shoulder. He was small and warm and real, his tiny fist clutching at her shirt. She turned back to find Kwon Dae-hyun watching her with an expression she couldn't name. Hunger maybe, or longing, or both. "Let me try," he said. "You're not strong enough. Please." The single word held so much weight. Aisha hesitated, then carefully transferred Jun-ho to Kwon Dae-hyun's arms. She had to help him position the baby. Had to support most of the weight herself because his wounded shoulder couldn't take the strain. Kwon Dae-hyun looked down at his son with an expression of absolute terror. "I'm going to drop him." "You won't. I've got you." And she did. Aisha's hands cradled both the baby and the father, creating a bridge between them. Jun-ho settled almost immediately, his small body relaxing against Kwon Dae-hyun's chest. The baby's tiny hand reached up, grasping at the ink on his father's neck. For the first time since Aisha had found him bleeding in that alley, Kwon Dae-hyun looked like he might break. His eyes closed, his jaw clenched. A single muscle jumped in his cheek. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "How to be soft. How to be safe. You learn. Aisha's voice was gentle. You figure it out as you go. You make mistakes and you fix them and you keep trying. What if I fail? Then we fail together. Aisha meant it. She'd tied herself to these 3 lives without thinking about the consequences. And now, watching this dangerous man cradle his son with shaking hands, she realized she wouldn't take it back even if she could. Kwon Dae-hyun opened his eyes, looked at her, and Aisha saw the moment he stopped fighting whatever was building between them. The moment he accepted that she wasn't leaving, that they were in this together. Now for better or worse. Aisha. Her name on his lips felt like a promise, like a threat, like the beginning of something neither of them could control. Yeah, thank you. He said it with such sincerity, such raw honesty that Aisha felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been keeping carefully locked away since the night her mother died. Hope. You're welcome. They stayed like that for a long moment. The 3 of them connected by touch and necessity and something far more dangerous. Outside, Chicago continued its relentless pace. Sirens wailed in the distance. Traffic hummed on the expressway. The world kept turning, indifferent to the small revolution happening in Aisha Jackson's 300 square feet studio apartment. But in this moment, in this fragile bubble of safety, it was just the 4 of them against everything else. Aisha had no idea how they'd survive. Had no plan beyond getting through the next hour, the next day. But she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice, even if it killed her. 3 days passed in a strange suspended reality. Aisha called in sick to her clinical rotations, claimed a family emergency for her quick dash shifts. The $43 in her account dwindled to nothing. She rationed the last of the formula. Learned to anticipate when Haewon would wake crying, and when Junho just needed to be held. Learned the rhythm of Kwon Dae-hyun's breathing. Could tell when his pain spiked. When the fever threatened to return. They fell into a routine born of necessity. Aisha changed bandages at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Kwon Dae-hyun insisted on trying to help with the babies despite his limited mobility. His determination almost painful to watch. They didn't talk about what came next. Didn't acknowledge the impossibility of their situation. The studio apartment felt both too small and strangely intimate. Every movement brought them into contact. Every conversation happened in whispers so as not to wake the twins. Aisha slept on the floor between the futon and the babies, a human barrier that had become a habit. On the 4th morning, Aisha woke to find the radiator actually working. Heat pumped through the ancient metal, filling the apartment with blessed warmth for the first time since winter began. She sat up, disoriented. Kwon Dae-hyun was awake, sitting on the edge of the futon with a screwdriver in his good hand. You fixed my heater. It was a simple mechanical issue. The pressure valve was stuck. He set the screwdriver down carefully. You were cold. Something about that simple statement, you were cold, made Aisha's chest tight. She'd mentioned it once offhand 3 days ago. And he'd remembered. Had dragged himself across her apartment to repair something she'd given up on months ago. Thank you. You're welcome. Kwon Dae-hyun's gaze held hers. I owed you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. Aisha broke the moment by standing quickly, busying herself with the morning routine, but she was hyper-aware of him now in a way that made her skin feel electric, of how his eyes followed her movements, of the way the air seemed charged whenever they occupied the same space. By noon they'd run out of formula. Aisha stared at the empty containers with mounting dread. She had no money, no way to get more supplies. The babies would be hungry again in 3 hours, and she had nothing to give them. I need to make a supply run. She said it casually like it wasn't terrifying. No, Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was sharp. It's not safe. We don't have a choice. They need food. Then I'll go. You can barely stand. Aisha grabbed her jacket. I'll be fast. Corner store. In and out. Aisha. Watch the babies. I'll be back in 20 minutes. She left before he could argue further, before she could lose her nerve. The November air bit at her face as she jogged down the 3 flights of stairs. Outside, the neighborhood looked normal. Afternoon shoppers, delivery trucks, nothing suspicious, but Aisha couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The corner store was 6 blocks away. She walked quickly, hands jammed in her pockets, hood pulled up against the cold. The cashier barely looked at her as she grabbed 2 containers of formula and a box of diapers, the cheapest brands available. $32. Card declined, the cashier said flatly. Can you try again? Declined. Aisha's face burned. The line behind her was growing. I can put back the diapers. A hand reached past her, placing 2 crisp $20s on the counter. Aisha spun around to find an older woman behind her. Korean, elegant despite her simple coat. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For the babies, the woman said softly. They need to eat. Every instinct Aisha had screamed danger. But she took the money, muttered a strangled thanks, and fled the store with her purchases. She made it 2 blocks before realizing someone was following her. Not obviously, not threateningly. Just a man in a dark coat maintaining a steady distance behind her. When Aisha sped up, he sped up. When she turned down a side street, he followed. Aisha broke into a run. She burst through her apartment building door, took the stairs 2 at a time, fumbled with her keys. The man didn't follow her inside, but she'd felt his eyes on her back the entire way. Watching. Tracking. We're compromised, she gasped as soon as she was inside. Someone followed me. An old woman paid for the formula, and then a man. Kwon Dae-hyun was already moving. His face gray with pain but his eyes sharp. Shadowers. They mark you so others can track you. We need to leave now. We can't. You're still healing and the babies. We'll die if we stay here. He was already gathering supplies, moving with purpose despite his injuries. They're mapping our resources. Waiting for the right moment to strike. Aisha's hand shook as she warmed the bottles, her mind racing. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. She fed Haewon first, the baby drinking hungrily, oblivious to the danger. Junho followed. His small face relaxed and trusting. Aisha memorized every detail. The weight of them in her arms. The sweet milk smell. The way their tiny hands gripped her fingers. If something went wrong, she wanted to remember this. This moment of peace before everything fell apart. Junho had just finished his bottle when his body went rigid in her arms. Kwon Dae-hyun. Aisha's voice cracked with terror. Something's wrong. The baby's eyes rolled back. White foam bubbled from his small mouth. His body began to convulse in violent spasms. No, 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 no. Aisha laid him on the floor, turning him on his side. Her training kicked in, automatic and desperate. Airway, breathing, circulation. But nothing in her clinical rotations had prepared her for this. For holding a seizing infant in her arms while her own heart tried to claw its way out of her chest. Kwon Dae-hyun was beside her in an instant. His pain forgotten. What's happening? Poison. The word came out choked. The formula. They poisoned the formula. Haewon started seizing seconds later. Aisha's world narrowed to a single pinpoint of focus. 2 babies dying in front of her. 2 lives she'd sworn to protect slipping away because she'd been stupid, careless, desperate. Hospital, Kwon Dae-hyun said. Now. We can't. Aisha was already moving, grabbing supplies, her hands steady despite the screaming in her head. They'll be waiting. They want us panicked. Want us to run straight into their trap. Then what? I'm going to pump their stomachs. She said it with more confidence than she felt. Here. Now. Aisha had seen the procedure done exactly twice during her pediatric rotation. Had read about it in textbooks, had practiced on training dummies that didn't convulse and foam and die. She grabbed the medical tubing from her supply box. Turkey baster from the kitchenette. Saline solution she'd been using to clean Kwon Dae-hyun's wound. Not sterile, not proper equipment, but it was all she had. Hold Haewon. Aisha's voice was pure command. Keep her on her side. Don't let her choke. Kwon Dae-hyun obeyed instantly, cradling his daughter with his good arm. His face was a mask of controlled terror, but his hands were steady. Aisha worked on Junho first, measured the tubing, inserted it carefully down his tiny throat. He gagged, his small body fighting her. She pushed through, hating herself, knowing she had no choice. Pumped saline in, suctioned the contents back out. Vomit and milk and the acrid smell of something chemical. Again and again until the fluid came back clear. Junho's seizures slowed, stopped. His breathing evened out. Aisha moved to Haewon. repeated the process with shaking hands. The little girl fought harder, her small hands pushing weakly at Aisha's arms, but Aisha couldn't stop, pumped and suctioned until Haewon's stomach was empty and her breathing stabilized. Both babies lay exhausted and pale, but breathing. Alive. Aisha collapsed back against the wall, her entire body trembling. Tears streamed down her face, silent and hot. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. But the horror of what had almost happened, what could still happen, crashed over her in waves. Kwon Dae-hyun set Haewon carefully in her car seat and turned to Aisha. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw his control shatter completely. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her against his chest, his good arm wrapping around her with crushing force. Aisha felt him shaking, felt the wetness of tears against her hair. You saved them. His voice was raw, broken. You saved my children. Aisha couldn't speak, could only cling to him and shake and try to breathe through the adrenaline crash. They stayed like that for long minutes. 2 people, a black woman and a Korean man, holding each other together while the world tried to tear them apart. When Kwon Dae-hyun finally pulled back, his eyes were dry but haunted. He cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing away her tears. I owe you more than my life, he whispered. I owe you my legacy. You don't. Everything I have, everything I am, everything I've built. His gaze burned into hers. It's yours now. All of it. Because without you, none of it matters. Aisha's breath caught. She knew what he was offering. Not just gratitude, not just debt, but something far more dangerous and permanent. Kwon Dae-hyun, don't answer now. He released her gently, stepping back. But know that the offer stands. Always. Aisha nodded, not trusting her voice. They spent the next hour monitoring the babies, watching for any lingering effects of the poison. Both twins slept restlessly, their small faces still too pale, but their breathing remained steady. We can't stay here, Kwon Dae-hyun said finally. They've marked this location. They'll come tonight. Where do we go? I have a place, a safe house. No one knows about it. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. But once we go there, Aisha, there's no going back. You'll be fully committed to this world, to me, to everything that comes with it. Aisha thought about her empty apartment, her abandoned dreams of finishing nursing school, her dead-end delivery job, her mounting debt, and crushing loneliness. She thought about her parents' grave she hadn't visited in 6 months because she couldn't afford flowers. Then she looked at the twins, alive and breathing because she'd refused to give up. Looked at Kwon Dae-hyun, this dangerous, complicated man who trusted her with everything that mattered. Let's go, she said simply. They packed in silence. Aisha changed the babies into clean clothes, secured them in their car seats. Kwon Dae-hyun moved slowly but deliberately, gathering what little they had. His phone went into the toilet tank, destroyed beyond recovery. Aisha's phone followed. No tracking, he explained. From this point forward, we're ghosts. Aisha took one last look at her studio apartment, at the peeling wallpaper and broken furniture, and the life she'd been barely surviving. She felt nothing, no regret, no nostalgia, just relief that she was finally leaving it all behind. They made it to the van without incident. Kwon Dae-hyun gave her directions in clipped sentences. They drove in silence, the city lights blurring past the windows. Aisha kept checking the rearview mirror, searching for pursuit, but the streets remained clear. Empty. Too empty. Something's wrong, she said. I know. They were 15 minutes from the safe house when Kwon Dae-hyun's burner phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, his expression hardening as he listened. What? Aisha asked when he hung up. Change of plans. His voice was flat, deadly. The safe house is compromised. They were there first. Then where? I don't know. For the first time, Kwon Dae-hyun sounded lost. I don't know where else is safe. Aisha's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Behind them, headlights appeared in the distance. 1 vehicle, then 2, then 4. We have company, she said quietly. Kwon Dae-hyun turned to look, his jaw clenched. Drive fast. Aisha pressed the accelerator to the floor. The old van protested, engine whining, but it responded. The speedometer climbed past 60, past 70. The pursuing vehicles matched their speed. They're not trying to stop us, Kwon Dae-hyun observed. They're hurting us. To where? Nowhere good. Aisha's mind raced. They had a wounded man, 2 babies, and a van that wouldn't survive a high-speed chase. No weapons, no backup, no plan. They were trapped. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, hunters closed in for the kill. The GPS on Kwon Dae-hyun's burner phone showed nothing but dead ends ahead. Aisha took a hard right, tires screaming, the van tilting dangerously. In the back, the babies woke crying. Their wails filled the small space, adding to the chaos. Kwon Dae-hyun pointed to an industrial complex coming up on the left. Storage facilities, multiple buildings. We can lose them in the maze. Aisha didn't hesitate. She yanked the wheel, jumping the curb, crashing through a chain-link fence that had seen better days. The van bounced violently over rough pavement, shock absorbers screaming. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles slowed, regrouping. They'd bought themselves minutes, maybe. Aisha killed the lights and drove by moonlight alone, navigating between massive storage buildings. She pulled into a narrow alley between 2 units and cut the engine. Silence, just the tick of cooling metal and the baby's frightened cries. We need to move. Kwon Dae-hyun was already out of the van. His face gray with pain, but his movements decisive. Take the twins. Find a unit that's unlocked. What about you? I'm the distraction. He pulled a gun from somewhere in his jacket. Aisha hadn't even known he was armed. They want me. I'll lead them away from you. Absolutely not. Aisha, no. She grabbed the first car seat, then the second. Her arms burned with the weight, but she didn't care. We stay together. That's the only way this works. She saw him start to argue, then stop. Something shifted in his expression. Not surrender, recognition. He nodded once and led the way deeper into the complex. The storage facility was a labyrinth of identical buildings. Kwon Dae-hyun moved with purpose despite his injuries, checking doors, testing locks. The third unit he tried had a broken latch. He shouldered it open and ushered Aisha inside. Darkness, complete and absolute. Aisha's heart hammered as she fumbled for her phone. Remembered she destroyed it. Then light bloomed. Kwon Dae-hyun had found a battery-powered lantern someone had left behind. The unit was maybe 10 by 15 feet. Empty except for some old furniture covered in dust and a stack of cardboard boxes. Aisha set the car seats down carefully, her arms shaking with relief. They're right behind us, Kwon Dae-hyun said quietly. He was listening at the door, the gun steady in his hand despite his weakened state. How many? At least 6, maybe more. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Aisha, if I tell you to run, I won't. If I tell you to run, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. You take the twins and you go. There's an emergency kit in the van under the driver's seat. Cash, fake IDs, everything you need to disappear. Stop talking like you're going to die. I'm talking like I'm prepared for reality. Kwon Dae-hyun moved closer, cupped her face with his free hand. You've already done more than anyone could ask. More than I had any right to hope for. But this is where it ends for me. This is where you save yourself. No. Aisha grabbed his wrist, held on tight. We survive this together or not at all. Those are the options. Choose. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Then Kwon Dae-hyun smiled. That devastating crooked smile that made him look almost human. You're impossible. I'm committed. There's a difference. A sound outside cut off whatever he was about to say. Footsteps, multiple sets. Getting closer. Kwon Dae-hyun killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed them again. Aisha heard him move, positioning himself by the door. She fumbled in the shadows, finding a metal pipe among the old furniture. Not much, but better than nothing. Stay behind me, Kwon Dae-hyun whispered. No matter what happens, protect the twins. The footsteps stopped right outside their unit. Aisha's breath caught. In the darkness, she heard the baby shifting, starting to fuss. She pressed her hand gently over Junho's mouth, hating herself for it, but knowing a cry right now would kill them all. The footsteps moved on. Aisha released the breath she'd been holding. They waited in the darkness, every sense on high alert. Minutes crawled past like hours. The babies somehow understood the danger, staying quiet with an eerie awareness. Then the door exploded inward. The metal shutter screamed as it was yanked upward. fluorescent light from outside flooding the unit. Aisha was blind, her eyes struggling to adjust. She heard Kwon Dae-hyun move, heard the sharp crack of gunfire. Someone screamed. Multiple someones. Aisha's vision cleared enough to see 2 bodies on the ground. Kwon Dae-hyun was already moving, his wounded shoulder forgotten, pure instinct and training taking over. But there were more coming. She could hear them surrounding the building. Back door. Aisha grabbed both car seats, adrenaline giving her impossible strength. There has to be a back door. Kwon Dae-hyun fired twice more, covering their retreat. Aisha found a rusted service entrance, kicked it open with more force than she knew she had. They spilled into an alley, darkness and shadows and nowhere to run. A figure stepped out in front of them, tall, armed, face covered by a black mask. Kwon Dae-hyun raised his gun, but the stranger was faster. He fired. Not at Kwon Dae-hyun, but at the ground near his feet. A warning shot. Don't. The voice was muffled by the mask, but something about it made Aisha's blood freeze. Please don't make me do this. Then don't, Kwon Dae-hyun said coldly. Step aside. Let us pass. I can't. They'll kill The stranger's voice broke. They'll kill her. My sister. If I don't bring you in, they'll kill her. Aisha's world tilted sideways. That voice, older, rougher, but familiar in a way that made her chest constrict with horror and impossible hope. Marcus. Her voice came out barely a whisper. The masked figure froze. Slowly, he reached up and pulled the mask off. Aisha's brother stared back at her. 3 years older, harder, his brown skin covered in scars she didn't recognize, but unmistakably Marcus. Aish. His gun wavered. What are you? Why are you? You were supposed to be in rehab. Aisha heard her own voice from very far away. You said you were getting clean. I lied. Marcus's face twisted with shame and desperation. The syndicate bought my debts. Gave me a choice. Work for them or watch you die to pay what I owed. So you've been hunting us. Aisha's shock was hardening into something cold and sharp. You've been trying to kill him. I'm trying to save you. Marcus's voice cracked. Don't you get it? They own me now. They own everything I am. And if I don't deliver him, they'll start cutting pieces off you until I do. Kwon Dae-hyun moved faster than Aisha could track. One moment he was beside her. The next he had Marcus against the wall. Gun pressed to his temple. How many are here? Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was ice. How many hunters? 12. Maybe 15. Marcus wasn't fighting back. Please. Please. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want my sister safe. By working for the people trying to kill her? By doing whatever it takes to keep her alive. Kwon Dae-hyun's finger tightened on the trigger. Aisha saw it. Saw the calculation in his eyes. Saw him decide that Marcus was too dangerous to leave alive. Don't. Aisha stepped forward, her hand closing around Kwon Dae-hyun's wrist. Please don't. He'll betray us again. Maybe. Aisha looked at her brother, this stranger wearing Marcus's face. But he's still my brother, and I need to know why. I need to understand. Kwon Dae-hyun held her gaze for a long moment. Then slowly he lowered the gun, but he didn't step back. Didn't give Marcus space to move. Talk, Aisha said to her brother. Fast. Marcus slumped against the wall, looking defeated. After Mom and Dad died, the debts didn't die with them. The hospital bills, the funeral costs, the mortgage on the house. It all fell to me. I couldn't. I didn't know how to. So you borrowed from criminals. I borrowed from people who said they could help. Marcus's laugh was bitter. They helped all right. Helped themselves to everything I had left. When I couldn't pay, they gave me options. Work for them or watch them take everything from you. Your apartment, your tuition, your life. Why didn't you tell me? Aisha's voice broke. Because you were already drowning. You just lost them too. You were working yourself to death trying to stay in school. What was I supposed to do? Add my failures to your pile? A sound from the far end of the alley cut off Aisha's response. More footsteps. More hunters closing in. They're coming, Marcus said quietly. I told them I'd bring you out the back. Deliver you to them. They're expecting. He never finished the sentence. Kwon Dae-hyun moved with deadly precision, spinning Marcus around and using him as a shield. As the first wave of hunters rounded the corner, gunfire erupted. Marcus jerked in Kwon Dae-hyun's grip, taking 2 rounds meant for them. No! Aisha's scream was lost in the chaos. Kwon Dae-hyun returned fire. His aim deadly, even wounded. 3 hunters went down. 4. But there were too many. They were pinned down with nowhere to run. Marcus slumped in Kwon Dae-hyun's arms, blood spreading across his chest. His eyes found Aisha's, filled with pain and regret and something that might have been relief. Run! Marcus whispered. Aish, please run. Kwon Dae-hyun was already moving, dragging Aisha back toward the storage unit, toward any cover they could find. But Aisha looked back, saw her brother collapse to the ground, saw the pool of blood spreading beneath him, saw him mouth words she couldn't hear. I'm sorry. Then Kwon Dae-hyun pulled her around a corner, and the world exploded into violence and chaos, and the desperate mathematics of survival. They ran. They ran through the labyrinth of storage units. Kwon Dae-hyun's arm iron around Aisha's waist, half carrying her as she clutched both car seats against her chest. The babies screamed, their wails echoing off metal walls, a beacon for every hunter in the complex. Behind them, gunfire erupted in sharp bursts. Bullets pinged off aluminum siding, sending sparks into the darkness. Aisha's lungs burned. Her arms felt like they were being ripped from their sockets, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Marcus's blood was still warm on her hands. Kwon Dae-hyun pulled her left, then right. His movements instinctive despite his wounds. He knew how to navigate chaos, how to read the sounds of pursuit, and adjust their trajectory on pure calculation. Aisha just held on and trusted him. They burst out of the maze into an open lot. The van sat 50 yards away, bathed in harsh security lighting. Too far, too exposed, Aisha gasped. Yes, we will. Kwon Dae-hyun's grip tightened. On 3, sprint. Don't look back. Aisha counted her own heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. They ran. The world narrowed to the sound of her feet pounding pavement. The weight of the babies threatening to pull her down. The electric awareness of Kwon Dae-hyun beside her. She heard shouts behind them. More gunfire. A bullet struck the ground 6 inches from her foot, sending up a spray of asphalt. Then they were at the van. Kwon Dae-hyun yanked the door open, practically throwing Aisha inside. She secured the car seats with shaking hands while he returned fire, his body shielding the open door. 3 shots, 4. A scream from somewhere in the darkness. He dove into the passenger seat. Drive. Aisha's hands found the keys still in the ignition. She'd never removed them. The engine roared to life. She floored it, the van fishtailing as they peeled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, she saw figures emerging from the storage maze. Saw muzzle flashes. Heard the distinctive thunk of bullets hitting the van's rear panels. Then they were on the main road, merging into sparse late-night traffic. Just another anonymous vehicle in Chicago's endless flow. Aisha drove in silence for 20 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, checking mirrors obsessively. Beside her, Kwon Dae-hyun was checking his burner phone, his face illuminated by the screen's pale glow. The safe house, Aisha finally said. Her voice sounded wrong. Hello. You said you had a safe house. It's compromised. Kwon Dae-hyun didn't look up from the phone. Min-ho just sent coordinates. A motel outside the city. He says it's clean. Can we trust him? No. Kwon Dae-hyun locked the phone. But we're out of options. Aisha's hands tightened on the wheel. In the back seat, the twins had cried themselves into exhausted sleep. She could hear their tiny hitching breaths, could smell the copper tang of blood. Hers, Kwon Dae-hyun's, Marcus's, all mixed together in the enclosed space. Marcus, her brother, the ghost who'd been hunting them. He hesitated. Aisha whispered. When he recognized me, he didn't want to shoot. He would have. Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was flat. Eventually, when the alternative was worse. You don't know that. I know men like him. I've been men like him. He turned to look at her. His face half-shadowed in the passing streetlights. Your brother sold his soul for a debt. Once you do that, Aisha, there's no buying it back. You just become someone else's weapon until you break. Aisha wanted to argue, wanted to defend Marcus, but she'd seen the scars on his body, the hollowness in his eyes. Her brother had been gone long before tonight. What remained was just a ghost wearing his face. I should have known, she said. Should have seen. Stop. Kwon Dae-hyun's hand found hers on the gearshift. His fingers laced through hers, warm and solid and real. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. Believe me, I've tried. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The Starlight Motel squatted on the edge of the highway like a forgotten wound. Neon flickered weakly, promising vacancy in color TV and letters that had probably been optimistic 20 years ago. Aisha pulled into the lot, parking in the shadows between two semi-trucks. Wait here. Kwon Dae-hyun was out before she could protest, moving toward the office with the gun concealed under his jacket. Aisha watched him go, her heart hammering. In the back seat, Hae-won stirred, whimpering softly. Aisha reached back, her fingers finding the baby's small hand. Hae-won's grip tightened reflexively, and something in Aisha's chest cracked open. These children had lost so much. Their mother, their home, their safety, and now they were sleeping in a bullet-riddled van outside a highway motel because the world wanted them dead. Kwon Dae-hyun emerged from the office holding a key. Room 14, end unit. He gestured for Aisha to follow. The room smelled like bleach and decades of cigarette smoke. 2 double beds with questionable sheets, a bathroom with rust stains in the tub, a window that looked out on the highway where trucks roared past every few minutes, making the thin walls shudder. Aisha set the car seats on the first bed while Kwon Dae-hyun checked the locks, the window, the adjoining door. His movements were mechanical, trained, but she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body, the way he favored his wounded shoulder, the gray cast to his skin. You need to rest, she said. I need to think. He sat on the edge of the second bed, the gun still in his hand. Min-ho wouldn't have sent us here without a reason. Either it's genuinely safe or it's bait. Which do you think it is? Both. Kwon Dae-hyun's smile was bitter. Everything is both, Aisha. Safety and trap. Ally and enemy. The only question is which kills you first. Aisha moved to the bathroom, wet a threadbare towel with cold water, brought it back to him. She knelt between his legs, dabbing at the blood crusted on his face, his neck. He let her, his eyes closing, his breathing evening out. I killed him, Aisha whispered. My brother. I didn't pull the trigger, but I let you. You made a choice. Kwon Dae-hyun's eyes opened, dark and depthless. Between the brother who sold you for his debts and the children who need you to survive. That's not murder, Aisha. That's mathematics. It doesn't feel like mathematics. No, his hand came up, cupping her jaw. His thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't known she'd shed. It feels like drowning. Like you can't breathe because the guilt is crushing your chest. Like you'll never be clean again no matter how hard you scrub. Aisha stared at him. How do you know? Because I've made that choice 1,000 times. His gaze held hers. And every single time I chose survival. Chose the people who mattered over the people who didn't. Your brother stopped mattering the moment he pointed a gun at you. That's the only truth that counts. The room was so quiet. Just the hum of the ancient air conditioner and the distant roar of the highway. Aisha was still kneeling between his legs, her hands resting on his thighs, feeling the tension coiled in every muscle. I'm not like you, she said softly. No, Kwon Dae-hyun's other hand joined the first, cradling her face like she was something precious, breakable. You're better. You haven't been ruined yet. Maybe I want to be ruined. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Kwon Dae-hyun's breath hitched. His pupils dilated black, swallowing the dark brown of his irises. Don't say that. His voice was rough, strained. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me. Aisha rose on her knees, bringing herself level with him. She could feel the heat radiating off his body, could smell blood and gunpowder and something darker, more primal, could see the war happening behind his eyes, the desire fighting against the last shreds of his self-control. Aisha. Her name was a warning, a prayer. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. She kissed him like she was drowning and he was air. Like she needed to prove to both of them that she was still alive, still capable of feeling something other than fear and grief. Kwon Dae-hyun froze for half a heartbeat. Then he was kissing her back with a hunger that stole her breath. His hand slid from her face to her hair, fisting in the tangled strands. His mouth was hot and demanding, tasting like copper and desperation. Aisha's world narrowed to sensation. The scrape of his stubble against her chin. The way his teeth caught her bottom lip. The sound he made, something between a growl and a groan. When her hands found bare skin beneath his ruined shirt, he pulled back suddenly, breathing hard. We can't. Why not? Because you deserve better than a blood-soaked motel room and a dying mob boss. What if I don't want better? Aisha's hands were shaking as she reached for him again. What if I just want you right now before everything falls apart? Kwon Dae-hyun stared at her like she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. Then he was sitting on the edge of the bed, pulling her between his legs. Aisha straddled his lap, careful of his injuries, taking control so he wouldn't have to strain his wounded shoulder. He turned, pressing her against the wall beside the bed. The impact sent sensation racing down her spine. His hands were everywhere, sliding under her shirt, mapping the curve of her ribs, the dip of her waist. She arched into his touch, desperate for more, for everything. Aisha, he said her name against her throat, his lips tracing the pulse hammering there. If we do this, we do this. She pulled his face back to hers. No more talking, no more thinking. Just, a sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. They both froze. Kwon Dae-hyun set Aisha down carefully, his hand already reaching for the gun. 3 more knocks. Deliberate. Measured. Kwon Dae-hyun. A woman's voice muffled by the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk. Aisha's blood turned to ice. That voice, familiar in a way that made her stomach twist. Kwon Dae-hyun's face had gone absolutely blank. Get in the bathroom. Take the twins. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Who is it? My dead wife. Aisha stared at him, certain she'd misheard. But his expression was carved from stone. Whatever was on the other side of that door terrified him in a way bullets and blood never had. Aisha grabbed both car seats, moving quickly and quietly to the bathroom. She locked the door, then pressed her ear against it, straining to hear. She heard Kwon Dae-hyun cross the room, heard the chain slide free, heard the door open. Hello, darling. The woman's voice was silk and poison. Miss me. Aisha couldn't see through the bathroom door, but she could hear everything. The click of expensive heels on cheap linoleum. The rustle of fabric. The way the air in the motel room changed, becoming heavier. Dangerous. You're supposed to be dead. Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was emotionless, controlled. I got better. The woman Minji, Aisha's mind supplied, remembering the name from hushed conversations, laughed. It was a beautiful sound. Aren't you going to invite me in properly? Or has living in squalor dulled your manners? What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. Everything you have. Starting with what's inked on your skin. Aisha's hands tightened on the edge of the sink. In the car seats beside her, both twins slept on. Oblivious. She wanted to burst out of the bathroom. Wanted to grab Kwon Dae-hyun and run, but she stayed frozen, listening. The council thinks you're a hero, Minji continued. The devoted father who risked everything for his children. How touching. How noble. They have no idea what you really are. And what's that? Soft. The word dripped with contempt. You let sentiment cloud your judgment. You kept the boy when you should have eliminated him. You refused to expand into weapons trafficking. You turned down opportunities because they violated your precious code. A pause. You became weak, Kwon Dae-hyun. And weakness is why I had to die. You faked your death to stage a coup. I orchestrated an evolution. Minji's voice moved closer. The syndicate needs to adapt or perish. Your father understood that. He built an empire on blood and fear. You tried to build one on honor and restraint. Guess which one actually works? I'm not giving you the codes. I'm not asking, darling. Something metallic clicked. A gun being cocked. I'm taking. The question is whether I skin you alive or just put a bullet in your skull and work on the corpse. Either way, you're not leaving this room. Aisha's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She looked down at the twins still sleeping peacefully, looked at the flimsy bathroom door that wouldn't stop a determined child, much less armed killers. She'd promised Kwon Dae-hyun she'd stay hidden. But if he died out there, they all died anyway. Aisha's hands were shaking as she quietly opened the bathroom cabinet, searching for anything she could use as a weapon. Rusted scissors, a plunger, nothing useful. Her fingers closed around something hard and metallic. A pipe wrench, probably left by a maintenance worker and forgotten. It would have to do. Aisha lifted the wrench, testing its weight. Then she unlocked the bathroom door as quietly as possible and eased it open a crack. The scene that greeted her made her breath stop. Minji was beautiful in a way that didn't look quite human. Sharp features, skin like porcelain, dressed in white that somehow remained pristine despite the dingy motel setting. She held a gun steady on Kwon Dae-hyun, who stood with his hands raised, his wounded shoulder bleeding again through the bandages. Behind Minji, 2 men in tactical gear flanked the door. Professional, armed, watching Kwon Dae-hyun with the dead-eyed focus of trained killers. "Last chance," Minji said. "Give me the access codes willingly and I'll make this quick. Refuse and I'll make you watch while I feed your bastard children into the Chicago River, piece by piece." Kwon Dae-hyun's face didn't change expression, but Aisha saw his hands clench into fists. Saw the muscle jump in his jaw. "The boy isn't mine," he said quietly. Minji's perfect composure cracked slightly. "What? Junho? He's not my biological son." Kwon Dae-hyun spoke slowly, each word measured. "His father was my lieutenant, Jae-sung. He died protecting me from an ambush 3 years ago. I took Junho and raised him as my own. The children aren't twins, Minji. They never were." Aisha's mind reeled. She looked at the sleeping babies, Haewon and Junho, who she'd assumed were identical twins. But now that she knew, she could see the subtle differences. Haewon's rounder face, Junho's sharper chin. Different fathers. "You adopted him." Minji's voice was flat with disbelief. "You took in the orphan of a dead soldier and passed him off as your heir. Why?" "Because Jae-sung asked me to with his dying breath. Because Junho deserved better than the orphanage or the streets. Because it was the right thing to do." Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was steady. "Not that you'd understand that." "You're right. I don't." Minji raised the gun, centering it on Kwon Dae-hyun's forehead. "Which is why I'm going to kill you now." "Guards." Aisha burst out of the bathroom with the wrench raised. She didn't think, didn't plan. Just moved with the same desperate instinct that had made her press her hands to Kwon Dae-hyun's bleeding chest in that alley. She swung the wrench at the nearest guard's head with every ounce of strength she possessed. The impact sent shock waves up her arms. The guard dropped like a stone. The second guard spun toward her, raising his weapon. But Kwon Dae-hyun was already moving, grabbing Minji's gun hand and twisting. The shot went wide, punching through the motel room ceiling. Plaster rained down. Aisha swung the wrench again, catching the second guard across the temple. He staggered. She hit him again and again and again until he stopped moving. The silence that followed was deafening. Aisha stood over the unconscious guards, breathing hard, the wrench slick with blood in her dark hands. Across the room, Kwon Dae-hyun had Minji on her knees, his hand fisted in her perfect hair, her own gun pressed to her temple. "You shouldn't have threatened my children," he said quietly. Minji laughed, even with death pressed against her skull. "You can't kill me, darling. I'm still your wife, still protected by the old code. The old code died when you did." Kwon Dae-hyun's finger tightened on the trigger. "Wait." Aisha's voice cut through the tension. "Don't. Kwon Dae-hyun, if you kill her, they'll never stop hunting us. But if we let her go, if we have proof she broke the code first by threatening civilians." Aisha gestured to herself, to the twins sleeping peacefully in the bathroom despite the gunshot. "Then we have leverage. Evidence. Something to bargain with." Minji twisted in Kwon Dae-hyun's grip, trying to see Aisha properly. "Who is this? The delivery girl? The nursing student you dragged into this mess? She's the woman who just saved my life." Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was cold again. "How charming." Minji's smile was venomous. "Tell me, delivery girl, do you think he'll stay faithful to you longer than he stayed faithful to me? Or will you end up discarded like every other woman who thought she was special?" Aisha met the woman's gaze steadily. "I don't need him to be faithful. I need him to be alive. Everything else is just details." Something flickered in Minji's eyes. Respect maybe, or calculation. "Tie her up," Aisha said. "We're taking her with us." Kwon Dae-hyun stared at Aisha like she'd grown a second head. But he didn't argue. Just pulled zip ties from one of the unconscious guards and bound Minji's wrists and ankles with brutal efficiency. They left the motel room in ruins. Aisha carried both car seats while Kwon Dae-hyun half-dragged, half-carried Minji to the van. They loaded everything in record time. Aisha behind the wheel again. Kwon Dae-hyun in the passenger seat with his gun trained on his supposedly dead wife in the back. "Where are we going?" Aisha asked as she pulled out of the lot. "I don't know." For the first time since she'd met him, Kwon Dae-hyun sounded lost. "Every safe house is compromised. Every ally is suspect. We're ghosts with nowhere to haunt." Aisha's hands tightened on the wheel. In the back seat, Junho started to cry. A thin, pained sound that made her chest constrict. "Something's wrong," she said. Kwon Dae-hyun twisted in his seat. His face went ashen. "He's bleeding. Aisha, he's bleeding." They found an abandoned gas station off a rural highway. Aisha parked behind the building, out of sight of passing traffic. The fluorescent lights had long since died, leaving only moonlight to work by. She lifted Junho from his car seat with shaking hands. Blood soaked through his onesie. Fresh bright red. The bullet must have grazed him during the storage yard ambush. "We need a hospital," Aisha said. "We need a miracle." Kwon Dae-hyun was beside her, his face tight with fear. "Hospitals mean records. Records mean the council finds us. Finds them, then he dies. Is that what you want? To watch him bleed out because you're too paranoid to?" "I'll do it." Minji's voice cut through their argument. Still bound, still dangerous. But her eyes were fixed on Junho with something that might have been genuine concern. "Take my blood. I'm O-negative. Universal donor." Aisha and Kwon Dae-hyun both turned to stare at her. "Why?" Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was flat with suspicion. "Because I'm not a monster." Minji's smile was bitter. "Not the kind who lets children die anyway. That's your department, darling." The accusation hung in the air. Aisha looked between them, seeing years of history and hurt she couldn't begin to untangle. "Aisha." Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was quiet, leaving the decision to her. Aisha looked at Junho's pale face, looked at the blood spreading across her hands, made the only choice she could. Do it. They set up in the gas station's filthy bathroom, using Aisha's jacket as a surface. She'd stolen an 4 kit from her clinical rotation months ago, kept it in her emergency supplies just in case. Now she thanked whatever instinct had made her hoard medical equipment like treasure. Minji sat with her bound hands extended, watching as Aisha found the vein, inserted the needle, started the blood flow. The woman didn't flinch, didn't complain, just bled quietly while Aisha worked to save a child she'd threatened to kill an hour earlier. "He's not yours," Minji said after a long silence. She was looking at Kwon Dae-hyun, not Aisha. "You said Junho's father was Jae-sung." "Yes. Jae-sung was loyal, one of the few." Minji's voice was distant, remembering. "He would have died for you. Did die for you." "Yes. And you kept his son, raised him as your own heir. Let the entire syndicate believe he was your blood." Minji laughed softly. "That's why they couldn't find leverage, isn't it? They ran DNA tests on Junho expecting confirmation, but it didn't match. Made them think the whole family line was compromised. Made them move against you." Kwon Dae-hyun said nothing, but Aisha saw the truth in his silence. "You're an idiot," Minji said. "A sentimental, honorable idiot. Jae-sung's son should have been set up quietly in another country. Instead you kept him close. Made him a target." "He's my son." Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was steel. "Biology doesn't change that." No, Minji's gaze shifted to Aisha. "But it changes everything else. The council will never accept Junho as heir now. They'll kill him to ensure bloodline purity. Unless what?" Aisha demanded. "Unless someone with actual claim to leadership steps forward." Minji's smile was sharp. "Someone with authority. Someone who can challenge the old code and win." Aisha's hand stilled on the 4 line. "You're saying you'd..." "I'm saying I didn't fake my death and orchestrate a coup for nothing." Minji's eyes glittered in the dim light. "I wanted power, yes, but I also wanted evolution. Wanted to drag the syndicate out of the Stone Age and into the modern world. Your darling husband stood in the way of that. But you." She looked at Aisha with something like approval. You're not bound by tradition, not limited by the old code. You could actually change things. I'm a delivery driver, Aisha said flatly. I'm nobody. You're the woman who saved the heir, who keeps him alive despite impossible odds. Minji leaned forward despite her restraints. In the old stories, that makes you the queen whether you want the crown or not. Before Aisha could respond, Junho made a small sound. Not quite a cry, more like a sigh. His color was improving, the blood flow stabilizing. Aisha finished the transfusion with steady hands, disconnected the line, bandaged both Minji and Junho with the last of her supplies. He'll live, she said quietly. Kwon Dae-hyun's exhale was shaky. He lifted Junho carefully, cradling the baby against his chest with infinite gentleness. The big, dangerous mob boss reduced to a terrified father holding his child. Aisha's phone, the new burner Kwon Dae-hyun had bought at the gas station, buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Hello, Aisha. Minho's voice. I've been trying to reach the boss. Where are you? Somewhere safe. What do you want? I have news. The council is meeting tomorrow night. Emergency session. They're voting on succession. A pause. If Kwon Dae-hyun doesn't show, they'll declare him dead and divide his territory. Everything he built will be gone. Aisha looked at Kwon Dae-hyun, saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The way he held Junho like the baby was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. Where's the meeting? She asked. Minho gave her an address. A warehouse in the industrial district. Full circle. Back to where it all began. There's one more thing, Minho said. His voice went soft, almost apologetic. They're offering a bounty. 2 million for proof of death. 3 million for delivery alive. Every hunter in 3 states is converging on Chicago. You have maybe 6 hours before someone finds you. The line went dead. Aisha stared at the phone, her mind racing. 6 hours. $3 million. Every criminal, mercenary, and desperate fool with a gun would be hunting them. We need to split up, Kwon Dae-hyun said. He'd heard the whole conversation. You take the twins. I'll lead the hunters away. No, Aisha's voice was firm. We go together. We end this together. Aisha, I'm done running. She met his gaze steadily. We go to that meeting. We face the council. We finish this. They'll kill you. Maybe. Aisha smiled grimly. But at least I'll die doing something that matters. Kwon Dae-hyun stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, accepting her choice the same way she'd accepted his from the beginning. They drove through the night, heading back toward the city. Minji dozed in the back, still bound but no longer struggling. The twins slept peacefully, unaware of the storm waiting ahead. Aisha's hands were steady on the wheel. Her mind was clear for the first time in days. She was done being afraid, done being small. If the council wanted a queen, she'd give them one, even if it killed her. Before coming here, they'd made a single stop. Aisha's old apartment building. Mrs. Rivera from 2B had taken one look at the babies, a black woman handing over 2 Korean infants to her Hispanic neighbor, and pulled them inside without a word. Aisha left a gun on the counter and whispered, Anyone tries that door, you shoot. The warehouse where Aisha had found Kwon Dae-hyun dying felt different now. Familiar, almost like coming home. The same loading dock, the same shadows. But this time they walked in through the front door. The council was already assembled. 12 men in expensive suits, mostly Korean elders, seated around a long table that looked absurdly formal in the industrial setting. They all turned to stare as Kwon Dae-hyun entered with Aisha at his side. Minji, bound and gagged, was pushed behind them. Aisha had left the twins with the only person she trusted, Mrs. Rivera from apartment 2B, who'd taken one look at the babies and asked no questions. Some mercies were still possible in this world. Kwon Dae-hyun, the eldest council member, stood. You're alive. Disappointed. Kwon Dae-hyun's voice was cold, relieved. The old man's gaze shifted to Aisha, then to Minji. Though I see you've brought interesting company. The delivery girl who started this mess and a ghost we thought we'd buried months ago. Minji faked her death, Aisha said before Kwon Dae-hyun could speak. She orchestrated the coup, hired the hunters, poisoned the formula meant for the children. She violated every code the syndicate holds sacred. Serious accusations. Another council member leaned forward. Do you have proof? Aisha pulled out the phone, the one she'd taken from Minji's pocket during the struggle. She'd spent the drive hacking into it, her one semester of computer science finally paying off. She projected the contents onto the warehouse wall. Messages, financial transactions, kill orders, everything laid out in damning detail. The council studied the evidence in silence. When they finally spoke, their voices were cold with rage. The penalty for oath-breaking is death. Immediate and absolute. The eldest member looked at Minji with no emotion. Wait. Aisha's voice rang out. That's not why we're here. Every eye in the room turned to her. We're not here to punish Minji. Aisha continued. We're here to end the old code. To build something better. Something that doesn't eat its own children. Bold words from a civilian. One of the younger council members sneered. You have no standing here, girl. No voice. No, she has standing. Kwon Dae-hyun's voice cut through the room like a blade. She saved my life. Saved my children. She has more honor than anyone at this table. Honor doesn't grant council position. The old man's voice was tired. You know the law, Kwon Dae-hyun. She's a witness, and witnesses are liabilities. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. You want her dead? Kwon Dae-hyun said it flatly. Not a question. We want loose ends tied. Civilians eliminated. Business secured. The old man spread his hands. It's nothing personal. It's simply how things are done. Kwon Dae-hyun moved faster than Aisha could track. The gun appeared in his hand. 3 shots rang out. 3 council members dropped. Blood spreading across their expensive suits. The room erupted into chaos. Men reached for weapons. Shouted threats. But Kwon Dae-hyun stood with the gun steady, his face carved from stone. New rule, he said into the shocked silence. The woman lives. Anyone who argues dies. Kwon Dae-hyun gestured to the back of the room where Mrs. Rivera, who had followed them in, stood waiting. Get her out of here. The feds are waiting at the rendezvous point. She's their problem now. You're declaring war. The old man's voice shook. Against your own council, against tradition. No, Kwon Dae-hyun lowered the gun slowly. I'm declaring evolution. The old code dies here. Tonight we build something new or we burn it all down. Your choice. Aisha stepped forward, placing herself between Kwon Dae-hyun and the remaining council. She was terrified, but she'd been terrified for days now. Terror was just another state of being. You need leadership, she said. Someone who understands the old ways but isn't bound by them. Someone who can negotiate with law enforcement, with legitimate businesses, with the modern world. And you think that's you? The sneer was back in the younger member's voice. No, Aisha smiled. I think that's us. Kwon Dae-hyun knows the business. I know how to keep people alive. Together we're evolution. Separately, you're just waiting for the next coup to destroy what's left. The council members looked at each other. The math was simple. They'd already lost 3 members. Kwon Dae-hyun had proven he'd burn down the entire organization before letting Aisha die. And Minji's betrayal had shown how fragile the old system really was. Finally, the old man spoke. What are you proposing? A partnership. Kwon Dae-hyun runs operations. I handle external relations and civilian protection. Aisha's voice was steady. We modernize. We diversify. We stop running the syndicate like it's still 1950. And if we refuse? Aisha looked at Kwon Dae-hyun, saw the answer in his eyes. Then you die, she said simply. And we start over with people who understand what century we're living in. The silence stretched. Aisha's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. This was the moment. Accept or die. Evolution or extinction. The old man laughed. It was a rough, genuine sound. Jae-sung would have liked you. Aisha blinked. What? Junho's father. Isung. He always said the syndicate needed fresh blood. Someone who understood both worlds. The old man stood slowly, painfully. He would have approved of this madness. He extended his hand. Aisha stared at it for a long moment. Then she reached out and shook. His grip was firm despite his age. Welcome to the council, Aisha Jackson. Try not to get us all killed. 3 months later, Aisha stood in the penthouse overlooking Chicago's skyline. The view was better than her old studio apartment. Hell, the bathroom was bigger than her old studio apartment. Haewon and Junho were in the nursery, protected by security that made Fort Knox look casual. They were growing fast. Haewon had learned to laugh. Junho had figured out how to grab his own toes. Normal baby things in an abnormal world. You're thinking too loud. Kwon Dae-hyun's arms wrapped around her from behind. His shoulder had healed. The tattoos still covered his skin. All those coordinates and codes and secrets. But now she knew how to read them, how to protect them. I'm thinking about delivery orders, Aisha admitted. About how one fake sushi order changed everything. Regrets? No, she turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. Not one. It wasn't a fairy tale. The syndicate still had enemies. The council still tested boundaries. Minji was in a secure facility, being slowly rehabilitated or destroyed. Aisha wasn't sure which was happening and wasn't sure she cared. But Aisha was no longer the girl drowning in debt and grief. She was someone else now, someone harder, a black woman who'd held a dying man and refused to let him go. Someone who'd beaten assassins with a pipe wrench and stared down mob bosses without blinking. Someone who'd become a queen without ever wanting the crown. The twins are asking for you, Kwon Dae-hyun said against her hair. Well, Junho is. Haewon just threw her bottle at the nanny again. Aisha laughed. Coming, she took his hand. The same hand that had held a gun to her chest in a blood-soaked alley. The same hand that now held their family together. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, delivery drivers navigated the night. Somewhere out there, desperate people made impossible choices. But here, in this moment, Aisha Jackson had everything she needed. Did you catch the subtle clues about Minji's plan? Comment below and let us know your favorite high-stakes moment. Also, hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story.